All right, 538C. I wanted to clarify something. Uh, when I say Neo-Swedenborgians do not believe in God because they can prove God to exist, what I'm saying is that this God experience, this experience of God, which we hear about in near-death experiences and some other places, uh, Swedenborg, Howard Storm, and it arises consistently about 10% of the time. That this is a limited and conditional proof of God. Okay, so I am not proving that the God that the Catholic Church talks about or any other God exists. I'm just talking about this one specific conditional definition. And the condition is God only exists within human perception. So there is some mechanism within our psyche and or physiology which can and sometimes produces the experience of God. And so when somebody responds, well, that doesn't prove anything because that only applies to humans, okay? Yes, that's the condition. It only applies to humans. So if I were to say the human nose, the human nose doesn't exist because it only exists on humans, you can't say those two things. If it only exists on humans, it exists. Human noses exist only on humans. You don't see it anywhere else but on humans. So that's obviously a ridiculous reasoning. But it's the same reasoning that people say for disbelieving this whole heaven and afterlife world and experience and God. Because it only applies to humans. So if you're non-human, if you're not a human and you're listening to this doesn't apply to you. God doesn't really exist out there. God is only a human experience, speaking Neo-Swedenborgianistically. And I suspect it is a product of language acquisition. But that's another subject. The question I wanted to answer is, why does God allow suffering? Because I want to apply Neo-Swedenborgianism to different common questions, okay? So why does God allow suffering? Well, if you see God as nothing more than a human experience, okay, even though it is an extraordinary experience, it is, if you read about them, an experience which far outshines this whole world, okay? So we can touch things, we can smell things, we can taste things, we can see things, we can hear things. The people who have had this near-death experience come back and they say everything was magnified 1,000 times, plus they were bathed in love, plus there is colors they'd never seen before, plus there was a multitude of other things. So it's like this world. So the near-death experience world, the heaven world that people describe, is like this world, and you might say it's like this world because it's a product of thoughts and experience we've had in this world. That's what we would say. But it's within your own psyche, and somehow, for some reason, which I don't claim to know, when people go into their own psyche in this near-death experience, it is way more real and beautiful and extraordinary and loving and all kinds of things. So they say that they travel to some other realm. We Neo-Swedenborgians are saying, well, this is an illusion created by the psyche, physiology. But to say it is an illusion does not make it go away. Because it is an illusion you have to contend with. That's the bad news of Neo-Swedenborgianism. And it is also an illusion which lasts for an indeterminate amount of time. Okay, so the near-death experience, you go down the tunnel of light, you arrive in heaven, and grandma gives you a tour of a flower garden. Okay, that's what we've heard so far. And that's when you approach death. Well, let's say you take the final, you actually do die. And I would suspect that you probably have 300 years of life, of existence, of life, of visceral feeling, touching, smelling, tasting, seeing, hearing, feeling, remembering, thinking, planning, learning, all these things you can do for, let's say, 300 years. And that is a reality that we now have to contend with. So the question of why does God allow suffering? Well, to speak Neo-Swedenborgianistically, because there is no God outside of the human experience of God. So there is no God to blame for that suffering, because God is a product of language acquisition, which happens within our own psyche and is a part of our physiology. There's brain electrical activities and there's brain chemical activities and there's actual anatomy of the brain, and this all adds up to be physiology, and something happens within this physiology which, regardless of if it has a greater meaning outside of us, has a real existence within our realm of experience. So what I'm saying only applies to humans. God is a human experience. Okay? And so why does God allow suffering? Because there is no real God outside of our experience of it. Thanks. See ya.